so much for joining us for this 30th anniversary of the American Collegiate Hockey Association. I'm just going to take a brief moment and let the guys go around and introduce themselves. And I'll even let you, if there was a time that you had administrative or a coaching position, I'll let you talk a little bit about that. So we will start with Joe Batista.
Good evening, everybody, and great to see some familiar faces, and hope everybody's doing great. And I am very proud to be a part of this. I've said often that this is to me, the single most important thing that I've ever been involved in hockey, because it's impacted tens of thousands of lives, and really glad to be able to share some of the stories with everybody. So glad to be here.
I'm going to just throw it over to Al Murdoch. Dr. Al Murdoch, if you would just give us a brief introduction.
I consider this group my favorite group of all time. We've been through the wars together. We've accomplished a lot, and looking back historically, you're not only going to have videos, you're going to have books, and you're going to have a little bit of everything. We'll get Batista publishing 2 or 3 more books, and that'll be great. But happy to be a part of it. It's unbelievable that 30 years have passed by, and a lot of us knew each other before that, so that organization then was absolutely huge. So looking forward to hearing some stories tonight.
We'll take a moment and introduce Tom Keegan.
Okay. I had a producer here, but she left the room.
Now we will go to Don Spencer in Morgantown.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be part of this tonight, as it has been all the way along, being associated with the ACHA and you folks and all the different people that have made the work possible over the years. It started from a lot of informality of discussions and trying to figure out ways to solve problems, and it's just exciting to see what has happened to the organization through the work of so many very gifted people over the course of his 30 years.
We'll throw it to Men's Division I Commissioner Brian Moran.
Hi, everybody. My involvement with the ACHA started back in 1992 with Eastern Michigan University as a player. When I graduated in 96, I moved on administratively, helping out the ACHA Men's Division I with starting the website and statistician. Moved into my current position as the Men's Division I Commissioner in 1999. Along the way, I was also the ACHA Treasurer.
We will throw it to the lady on our panel, Zoe Harris.
Hi, everyone. Zoe Harris here. Thank you so much for asking me to be involved in this amazing moment for ACHA. I was involved, was the founder of the ACHA Women's Division, and also a coach for the ACHA Division II men's ice hockey team at the University of Washington.
Go just left of her to Marshall Stevenson.
Again, I'm excited to be on this call. I've been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks, ever since we heard it was coming on. I had 21 years with the ACHA as either secretary or president, and truly some of the best times of my life. And I'm sure we'll be talking about some of the trips and so forth, and some of the other things that went on. But it's been a good ride, and I'm looking forward to this event.
Just above him, Craig McCarthy.
Craig McCarthy. I coached Ohio University from 1993 to 2001. Had the pleasure of coaching, Coach Morris or Dan Morris. Awesome. First of all, thank you for having me. This is an honor actually to be here with this group. And it's great to see what has become of the ACHA after 30 years and all the work and what's nice for me as well is even though I only coached for 8 years, I got to see Coach Morris for another almost 12 years, I think. So indirectly, I feel like I've been involved for 20 years, even though it's been more about 8 years that I coached.
And last but not least, Dan Morris.
Hi guys, great to be here. Super excited to be here. What an honor to be with this group. Many of you got to coach against, coached with, got to play against. It's great to be on this panel. Like Coach McCarthy said, I coached. I was fortunate to coach 1 year as assistant coach with Craig, and then coached 12 years following Craig, and I got to play for Craig for 4 years. So Knew him pretty well. Knew him well enough for him to be the best man at my wedding. So we're pretty connected pretty well. So, but it's great to see everybody. I feel like I'm the young one at this panel, but I'm looking forward to some great stories.
So our goal tonight is to tell a story, and I feel so fortunate to be on with. I think everybody on the panel except one is in the ACHA Hall of Fame, and the person that's not, if you read their bio, it's very evident that it's just a matter of time for their contributions that they will be recognized in the same way. So we're gonna go back more than 30 years. We're gonna go back about 38 years to maybe around 1983. And I've had the opportunity to have some behind-the-scenes conversations with our panel, and we're just going to try to paint the picture of what the national championship, the unofficial national championship, was like in those years. So maybe some of you guys that were involved, can tell us a little bit about what those national tournaments were like back in, say, 1983.
I was a player back in those days at Penn State and played in, sort of what was considered the first national collegiate club championship, which was held in Colorado, at least to the best of my knowledge. And Coach Murdoch, I'd have to defer to you if there was one earlier than that. Very loosely organized, but a lot of fun. And it was a humble beginning that really took off because of the work of some of the people that just had such a passion for the sport of hockey. And that is clearly the one thing everybody on this panel has is a love and a passion for the game. So it was pretty amazing. Alabama Huntsville won that particular tournament. It was held in Boulder, Colorado. And I just have vivid memories of that and seeing it as the humble beginning.
Joe's right on target. It was a big event, the national championships, and it went by a lot of different names: club championship, just different names and different locations. And how we ever ended up at some of the locations, I'm not sure I could put down how we ended up, but somehow we ended up with a vote, either at the previous tournament or during the early part of the next season. But as time went by, different schools, North Dakota State University, Arizona, of course, the bids got better and better, and they would have banquets and they would have, lots of different things associated with the tournament. So it's something that the players look forward to. And the quality of play just improved tremendously. Quality of coaching, everything became very competitive. And a lot of it was aimed at, hey, there's going to be a national championship. Let's see if we can get invited or go to it. In the beginning, I'm not sure that it was an invitational or if it was how the team's records matched up. Maybe a combination of the two, but it was good. It was good for hockey.
I think it had something to do with what teams could afford to make it there too.
Exactly.
As the story goes, around 1985, I guess there was kind of a faction of teams, and that year there were two national championships. Do you guys have any memories of that?
You have to go for that one. I kind of remember it, but I can't remember the teams or the locations.
Yeah, actually, I was not a part of it at that point because I was not playing anymore, but wasn't coaching yet at Penn State. So what I do remember is that there were two different tournaments. I believe there was one at Alabama Huntsville, and then there was one in North Dakota, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where they were. And it didn't sit very well with everybody. That's what I remember talking to the Penn State people back in those days. And I think that had a lot to do with actually people saying, come on, we got to get our act together here. And, we've got to start talking about some common rules and how are we going to select teams? How are we going to select, the location, that sort of thing. So that was really, part of the evolution. It almost needed to happen to be a springboard into a more organized group that would set rules and make policy, that sort of thing.
So one thing that you had mentioned earlier, Al, is you said, whether teams were selected or invited. Was there a component of it at one time that was an invitation, or how did kind of, if you had 8 or 12 or 16 teams that went, how did that process tease out?
Usually it was the decision was made on who the host school would be, and the host school would have the biggest influence on the guidelines or teams. Of course, it's all associated with, you got to get accommodations, you got to have places for people to eat. And of course, the teams that were coming in had to pay for 90% of that. There might have been a banquet before the tournament started, but a lot of work went into it, and it just grew, got bigger every year. So it was a good sign, and something that schools like Iowa State, Illinois, we would shoot for that. We'd try to be the tops in our league, or as close to the top as we could. I know Ohio was in that fold as well. North Dakota State University, they drew a lot of their students from the junior leagues, so they were a pretty top-notch program. And of course, Arizona played in a professional arena, and I'm not sure if they still don't play in a professional arena, but man, they needed the gate receipts to pay the bills. So there was lots of stuff that went into the organization of it.
When the teams were selected to show up, were they ranked, or did you have pool play, or how did those early tournaments kind of tease out?
The host team, as Al indicated, pretty much got to run the show the way they wanted to. They got to seed the teams, and I think in a lot of cases it was driven by making sure that the host team was going to play the games at the prime times, and there was going to be decent sized crowds, that sort of thing. And as we would talk about bids, so to speak, it was every year somebody would add something different and try to entice schools to want to vote for them. But in my recollection is that the teams at the national tournament would say, okay, we're going to vote on where it's going to be the following year, and then that gave that school time to try to organize it, get it together, that sort of thing. But there wasn't a formal ranking system that I recall at that time, and that led to a lot of rather interesting seedings at the tournament. And, so again, like any organization that's trying to get off the ground, as we were, in our infancy there were a lot of latitude about who could rank who where, and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it was decided on the ice, and but I think enough of us kind of felt this urge to, hey, we've just got to make this more than just this loose affiliation of teams, and we had to bring some organization to it.
As the stories have gone, 1991, the national tournament, and as you guys have alluded to, was kind of up to the host team to invite, and probably the team in the country with the best record initially was not invited. And I heard that there was maybe some shaming going on and some conversations with the host team, and then ultimately that team was invited. In the conversations with you guys, it had really been a motivating factor for the meetings in spring of 1991 that really led to the formation of the association. Do you guys recall much of the feelings kind of at the end of the 1991 season where you were just like, look, guys, we need to make some changes?
A lot of the teams, more than I thought at the time. I didn't think there was that many schools at the National High School Tournament in Chicago. What was that called, Joe? A National High School Tournament? Or, yeah. I think Jim Smith, active in USA Hockey, was very instrumental in organizing, once high schools came in and then getting the word out to colleges and universities. And Tom Keegan probably is as familiar with this as anyone. But Jim Smith, it was kind of ironic because the NCAA would have rules, letting the cat out of the bag here a little bit, but they would have rules where you could not go down to the lower hallway where the players or teams were, and and you could not go into the dressing rooms. But at the same time, Jim Smith knew that this Murdoch could talk about hockey and talk about college opportunities. So he would invite me down to the lower hallway and the locker room. So I'd talk to the coaches, I'd talk to players, and lo and behold, we're getting at least to communicate with some of the best players. So the NCAA coaches weren't real excited about what hell's Murdoch doing down there? How come he could go down there? What's going on? And I bet Batista was in the back hallways too.
I was standing right behind you, Al.
Tom, you're probably more familiar with that Chicago high school tournament than anyone here.
It was called the Chicago Showcase.
Yep.
At the time of the tournament, most of the best players had already made deals for the next year. So you guys were able to talk to players who didn't have another opportunity.
We used to meet at Cranberry, Pennsylvania, and since Joe had an expense account, we'd ride in his car off to Skokie, Illinois, and yakking like this the whole time, talking about hockey and hockey problems. The national tournament obviously was a motivating force, but there were a couple other major drivers as far as I was concerned. And player eligibility was certainly right up there, as well as liability. And the whole business of how long a player could play and the academic performance of the player could be very marginal, if at all, and still be able to play. So that was the driver for our program at that time, because we were not in the at the level at that time of competing for a national tournament or even upper positions in the ranking. The whole business of player eligibility, however, and being able to recruit and to get the word out about what we were trying to do was very important. Tom was doing that college hockey guide, and he asked the question. My riding along with Joe, Joe and Tom were bantering back and forth about the whole business of recruiting, and Tom asked the question of, why not have another way of organizing the club teams, and why couldn't they be part of the college hockey guide too? Well, you can see the NCAA people at that time being very uncomfortable with the idea of some sort of parody in a publication. But Tom charged ahead, and next year, 1992, out came this college hockey guide with all the non-NCAA programs involved. So it was a huge change that was enabled there. And the first meeting, which was held on, where is it here? Anyway, the first meeting was held in April of 1991. And I believe Al was elected president at that time, and the name of the organization was selected, and the decision to proceed with bylaws went on ahead, and there were only 15 people there, and 5 of whom were from California and representing more of the D2 interests that were better organized in California than anywhere else in the country at that time. But it was a very informal time, lots of informal conversations that led to big decisions. Some of them that I had the privilege of being part of around Tom's kitchen table with Joe and Tom and myself, trying to figure out what the next step might be if we were serious about getting folks together.
You and Dawn and Tom getting together at McDonald's there very early on, even before the April meeting. And one of the things that you said then was, there was kind of a consensus among the 3 of you that you needed to get Al Murdoch involved. Can any of you guys just take a minute and explain that?
Yeah, well, I mean, not to put him on the spot at all, but Al was the old guy in the group. Now, I think Al was probably we thought, because of his ties with USA Hockey, because of his ties with the university. You know, a lot of us didn't have great ties with our schools. We were seen as, outside organizations, and Al had an extremely strong knowledge of not only the game of hockey, the history of hockey and organizations, and he was a driving force. He knew more people than anybody else because of his relationship with USA Hockey. And I've always joked around, and I think I told you this, Rusty, that I looked at him as the George Washington of the ACHA, and Tom Keegan was the Ben Franklin, and Don Spencer was our Thomas Jefferson, and the most underrated person in the formation of the organization. Me, I was the rabble rouser. I was the John Adams. I was just always stirred up grief, and I still excel at that. But we all came together. That was again, the humble beginning, and as Don alluded to, we all agreed that the best person to help bring all the factions together was Al.
What were your early connections with USA Hockey?
I just happened to be at the right spot at the right time. I'm such a damn old fart. I came to Iowa State in 1969, and I actually played 2 years on the Iowa State team. But then I started meeting people, and one of the first people I met was Bob Johnson. And at that time, he was coaching Wisconsin, and he was also the president of what is USA Hockey now, but it was called AHOUSE then, Amateur Hockey Association in the United States. Well, he was one that would latch on to people that he thought would be useful. So for about 25 years, he would invite me to come out to his hockey school in Aspen, Colorado. And I'd meet coaches from all over the world there who wanted to be with Bob Johnson. And I learned a tremendous amount. Another guy that was a good mentor for me in those early years, before some of you guys were even born, was Herb Brooks, because University of Minnesota was getting rolling, and he was a pretty enthusiastic, outgoing guy, and I was too. So there would be times where I'd be up in Minnesota talking to players and see that they were practicing. So I'd go by his practice, and he'd bring me down to the ice, and he'd introduce me to coaches and players, and all of a sudden, Iowa State's on the map, and this darn organization that we were forming, Bob Johnson and Herb Brooks were the first ones to say, hey, you don't take second seat to anybody. You're providing places for people to get a great education at great schools and also continue playing the great sport of hockey. We've lost a couple of those guys, but yeah, thank goodness we had Don on board with us, and Tom Keegan, that hockey guy, just absolutely incredible. You can take that book. Do you still have that printing machine, Tom?
I guess I do.
All right, let's get her going again. That was the best machine I've ever seen in my life, where you could put in the paperwork and the information, and then you got a damn book. And you show that to recruits, and you show it to sponsors, and they start giving you money, so that helps your program grow. So, in the early years, that's kind of what I did. And I'd stick my nose sometimes where a lot of people would say, don't stick your nose there, Murdoch. The Hobie Baker Awards, they used to have that up at the Decathlon Club in Minnesota. So I'd ask them, I'd say, hey, what if we get the most valuable player from the ACHA along with the NCAA most valuable player? They would say, oh, sure, why not? Well, it would end up, most valuable player from the ACHA would get to stand up and be recognized and get a big applause. All of a sudden, we've got all this recognition that's happening kind of by accident, but kind of intentionally. But boy, we had a good organization. There's no question in my mind it was one of the best organizations in the country. When we first met in Chicago, and Don, Tom, Joe, the rest of the crew, it's just keep pressing forward, keep growing, keep pressing forward. Don, get the darn rules written down. He was the best guy for writing down guidelines and stuff, while the rest of us were just charging ahead. So just a little bit of history. Bob Johnson missed the guy. God dang it, I hated to lose him. Herb Brooks, same thing. Darn car accident. Absolutely terrible. Two quality guys. USA Hockey has grown in leaps and bounds, and a big part of it, of that growth, was the ACHA. I don't know what anybody know the head count? Brian Moran probably knows. The first year we were organized, what we had about 20, 25 Division I schools, maybe about the same number, maybe a few more Division II. That was basically it. Now what are we at? We're right around 500 schools in the country that are playing organized hockey where all the uniforms match and coaches are fairly adult and reasonably dressed on the bench. That's what it's all about, guys.
When you guys formed, interestingly, Tom was the guy with no school affiliation, and so early on, I think it made you kind of a natural choice to kind of lead it right out of the gates. Do you have any members of that, Tom?
Well, I didn't step back quick enough. So, yeah, I guess I was the original executive director until things got too hot.
What sort of growing pains do you guys remember very early on in that 91, in the first 91 season? Some of the things that you've told me is player eligibility was really a hot topic. What are some other things you remember?
Officiating, some schools, it took a while to get to the point where, you had, one referee and two linesmen, or, 2 and 1 or 2 and 2. And, that was a big part of it. The ranking system was another big topic that changed a lot over the years. How we voted, when we voted. I think that had a lot to do with it as well. By the way, before I forget, this is the book. There it is, the College Hockey Guide. And if you look in there, I mean, you see how thick this was. Remember, this is pre-internet, right? We were in the Stone Age, so we had to do everything by fax and phone call, and to me, I said it earlier, the most underrated person in this whole thing was always Don Spencer, because he spent hours and hours. I mean, I know he had a lot of people that were contributing to it, but Don wrote the bylaws. He had this mind that just worked a lot better mind, that's for sure. I'm going to embarrass him a little bit here and let you know that people don't know this about him. I'm not even sure everybody on this call knows about it. He was one of the first goalies, if not the first goalie, to ever wear a face mask in competition back when he was at Hamilton College. And I think that's pretty amazing, right? So sorry, Don. Didn't mean to.
Well, when your nose wanders around your face, and like goaltenders' noses used to do those days, as well as tooth problems, you start looking for alternatives. So, I was fortunate to have an athletic trainer that was a track coach, and who made heel cups for his high jumpers out of fiberglass. And so, he was starting to help professional hockey players that were located in the town where my college is located, and creating arm protections and jaw protections and things when they get banged up. Well, he decided to go ahead, in my case, and try to make a full face mask. And that was 6 months before Jacques Plante wore his face mask. And I communicated with Jacques Plante in April when he made some statement that the press picked up on, saying, "I want to wear a mask next season." And so I typed out a letter telling them about the mask, which our trainer, Gene Long, had developed. So I got involved with the politics of it all at that time.
Hey, this ACHA is important. And then if you looked at the philosophy, it made a lot of sense, is you're giving opportunities for people to play, a lot of opportunity to play, and look at the schools. They're all quality education institutions.
National tournaments, obviously, back in the day, there was probably only, a couple leagues in men's Division I. There was only about 30, 35 teams, through those first 10 years.
I was saying, this is something the women need to do. This is something, that I think would give an opportunity to so many people that we never had when I was playing in 92 to 88 to 92.
We were a little apprehensive about going to the computer system, but I think at the end of the day, when it was built correctly and built right, I think it rewarded a lot of teams